6 months ago, Paloma Herrera was cleaning hotel rooms in Little Havana for minimum wage, sending every spare dollar to her sick grandmother in Cuba. Today she stands in a $15 million Bell Harbor mansion, holding the hand of a 4-year-old boy who hasn't slept through the night since his mother died, while his father, Dmitry Petrov, head of Miami's most dangerous Russian crime syndicate, watches her with desperate steel-gray eyes. How did a hotel maid become the only person who could calm the son of Miami's most feared man? It started with a job interview she never should have gotten, for a position no one else could handle, with a man who didn't believe in second chances. But sometimes, the most broken hearts recognize each other, and sometimes a whispered truth in the darkness can change everything. This is the story of how Paloma learned that some families aren't born. They're forged in fire, sealed with protection, and bound by a love that defies every rule. Paloma Herrera clutched her worn purse tighter as the Uber pulled through the massive iron gates of the Bell Harbor estate. Her stomach churned with a mixture of nerves and disbelief. 3 days ago, she'd been scrubbing bathroom tiles at the Fontainebleau Hotel. Now she was interviewing to be a nanny for, she swallowed hard, him, Dmitry Petrov. Even people who didn't know about Miami's criminal underworld knew that name. The Russian who owned half the city's nightclubs, restaurants, and God knew what else. The man whose black SUVs moved through South Beach like a presidential convoy. The one whose very presence could empty a room in seconds. The mansion loomed before her, white stone, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a circular driveway that could fit 20 cars. Paloma's entire apartment in Little Havana could fit in the foyer. She smoothed her best dress, a simple black number she'd bought at Target 3 years ago, and tried to calm her racing heart. You need this job, she reminded herself. Abuela's medical bills won't pay themselves. The front door opened before she could knock. A stern-faced woman in her 50s appeared, dressed in an expensive grey suit. Miss Herrera, I'm Mrs. Volkov, the house manager. Mr. Petrov is waiting. Paloma followed her through hallways lined with artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses. Everything was pristine, elegant, and cold. So cold. Where were the toys? The children's laughter. The warmth of a home where a 4-year-old lived. They stopped outside massive double doors. Mrs. Volkov knocked twice. "Enter!" came a deep voice from within. The office was enormous. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. And behind an imposing desk sat the man himself. Dmitry Petrov was not what she'd expected. Yes, he was intimidating. Broad shoulders filling out an expensive black suit, sharp jawline, those infamous steel-grey eyes that seemed to see straight through people. But there was something else. Exhaustion. Deep, bone-weary exhaustion that no amount of money or power could hide. He looked up from a stack of papers, and those grey eyes fixed on her. Paloma felt her breath catch. She'd seen dangerous men before, grew up around them in her neighborhood. But this was different. This man didn't just carry danger, he was danger. "Sit," he said simply, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Paloma sat, trying not to fidget under his intense stare. He studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he was reading her entire life story just by looking at her. "You're the 7th nanny to interview this week," he said finally, his accent barely detectable. Years in America had smoothed most of it away. The others lasted an average of 3 days before quitting. Some didn't even make it through the first night. "I don't quit easily, Mr. Petrov," Paloma said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "No?" He leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, Miss Herrera, what makes you think you can handle what 6 experienced, highly recommended nannies could not?" Paloma took a breath. She could lie, give him the professional answer he probably expected. Instead, she chose honesty. "Because I know what it's like to lose your mother." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even pain. "Explain." "I was 7 when my mother died. Cancer. And I know that when a child loses their mother, they don't just need someone to feed them and change their clothes. They need someone who understands that the world suddenly doesn't make sense anymore. That bedtime is the worst time because that's when the missing hurts the most." Dmitry was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Daniel hasn't slept through the night since his mother died 4 months ago. He screams. He fights. The powerful man's voice actually cracked slightly. "The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with him, but he won't sleep. And if he doesn't sleep, He'll make himself sick. Paloma finished softly. Mr. Petrov, may I ask how his mother died? His jaw tightened. Car accident. She was coming home from her book club. A drunk driver ran a red light. His hands clenched into fists on the desk. She died instantly. And Danny was close to her. She was everything to him. Katya. She was the gentle one. The soft place he could land after dealing with. He gestured vaguely, and Paloma understood. After dealing with having a father whose business involved things a 4-year-old shouldn't know about. I'd like to meet him, Paloma said. Dmitri studied her again. He's upstairs, but I should warn you, he doesn't like strangers. He barely tolerates me anymore. They walked up a grand staircase, past more expensive art and family photos that made Paloma's heart ache. There was Dmitri, younger and smiling, with a beautiful blonde woman and a chubby-cheeked toddler. They looked happy, normal even. The nursery was at the end of a long hallway. Dmitri knocked gently. Danny, there's someone here to meet you. Silence. He opened the door, and Paloma's heart broke a little. The room was beautiful, painted with clouds and airplanes filled with expensive toys and books, but huddled in the corner, clutching a worn stuffed bear, was the smallest, saddest little boy she'd ever seen. Daniel Petrov had his father's grey eyes and his mother's delicate features, but those eyes were too old, too haunted for a 4-year-old. He looked at Paloma with the wariness of a child who'd learned that people left. Hi, Danny, Paloma said softly, crouching down to his level. I'm Paloma. That's a very handsome bear you have there. Danny clutched the bear tighter but didn't speak. You know, Paloma continued, settling cross-legged on the floor, I had a bear just like that when I was little. His name was Oso. What's your bear's name? For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then in the smallest voice, Mama Bear. Paloma's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. Mama Bear is a perfect name. I bet she gives the best hugs. Danny nodded solemnly. Behind her she heard Dmitri's sharp intake of breath, probably the most his son had spoken to a stranger in months. Danny, Paloma said gently, would it be okay if I stayed here for a while? Maybe we could read a story or play with some of these amazing toys? The little boy looked at his father, then back at Paloma. Slowly, he nodded. I'll leave you two to get acquainted, Dmitri said, his voice rough with emotion. Mrs. Volkov will show you around later. As his footsteps faded down the hallway, Paloma turned her full attention to the broken little boy in front of her. She had no idea that in the next room, Dmitri Petrov was leaning against the wall, listening to his son's voice for the first time in weeks, and feeling something he'd thought died with his wife. Hope. 3 weeks later, Paloma had settled into a routine at the Petrov mansion. Danny still didn't sleep through the night, but he'd stopped screaming when she entered his room. Small victories. She'd learned that he loved pancakes shaped like animals, that he could count to 20 in both English and Russian, and that he had his father's stubborn streak. She'd also learned that Dmitri Petrov was nothing like the monster the newspapers made him out to be, at least not when it came to his son. She watched him now through the kitchen window as he pushed Danny on the swing set in the backyard. The little boy's laughter, a sound that had been absent for months, drifted through the open window. Dmitri's face was soft, unguarded in a way she'd never seen during their formal interactions. He's a good father, Mrs. Volkov said, appearing beside her with a cup of coffee. He loves Danny very much, Paloma agreed, more than his own life, which is why, the older woman hesitated, which is why what you've done for that boy means everything to him, to all of us. Paloma felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm just doing my job. No, dear, you're doing much more than that. Mrs. Volkov's knowing smile made Paloma's stomach flutter with something she didn't want to name. The truth was she was getting too attached. To Danny, yes, but also to his father. She'd caught herself watching for Dmitri's return each evening, had memorized the sound of his footsteps in the hallway. When he smiled, really smiled, not the cold expression he wore for the outside world. Her heart did dangerous things. It was ridiculous. She was the nanny. He was. Him. A man who lived in a world of violence and power, while she came from a world of struggle and survival. They were from different planets, but when he looked at her sometimes, when their hands brushed as they both reached for Danny, when he said her name in that low accented voice, she forgot about planets and differences and everything that made sense. Paloma! Danny's voice called from outside. Come push me too. She went outside, trying to ignore how Dmitri's eyes followed her movement. He stepped aside as she approached the swing, but not far enough. Their shoulders brushed, and she caught his scent, expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "Higher, Paloma, higher," Danny giggled as she pushed the swing. "Careful, Malenki," Dmitri said, the Russian endearment rolling off his tongue. "We don't want you flying to the moon." "I want to fly to the moon," Danny declared. "Mama said she's watching from the stars. Maybe I can visit her." The silence that followed was deafening. Paloma's heart broke as she watched Dmitri's face crumble for just a moment before he composed himself. "Your mama is watching," Paloma said softly, slowing the swing. "But she wants you to stay here with Papa and me. She wants you to grow big and strong first." Danny considered this seriously. "Will you stay forever, Paloma, like Mama was gonna?" The question hit like a physical blow. Paloma glanced at Dmitri, whose gray eyes were unreadable. "I'll stay as long as you need me, mi niño." It wasn't a promise she should make, but looking at this little boy who'd lost so much, she couldn't bring herself to give him anything less than absolute certainty. Later that evening, after Danny's bath and bedtime story, Paloma was gathering her things to head to her small apartment when Dmitri appeared in the doorway. "He's asleep?" he asked. "For now, but he'll probably wake up around midnight. He always does." Dmitri nodded, then surprised her by saying, "Stay." "I'm sorry?" "Tonight, stay tonight. There's a guest room down the hall from Danny's. If he wakes up, you'll be here." It made sense. Practical. But the way he was looking at her didn't feel practical at all. "Mr. Petrov, I don't think—" "Dmitri," he said quietly. "My name is Dmitri." The way he said it, like he was offering her something precious, made her pulse race. "Dmitri," she repeated, and watched something flicker in his eyes. "Stay, Paloma. Please." She should say no, should maintain professional boundaries, should remember that she was just the nanny. Instead, she nodded. The guest room was bigger than her entire apartment, with a king-size bed and an ensuite bathroom that looked like something from a luxury hotel. Mrs. Volkov had left pajamas and toiletries, as if she'd known this would happen. Paloma had just changed into the silk pajama set, far too expensive for someone like her, when she heard it. Danny's cries echoing down the hallway. She rushed to his room, finding him sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face, clutching Mama Bear. "Shh, mi amor," she whispered, climbing into bed beside him. "I'm here. Paloma's here. I had the bad dream again," he sobbed. "Mama was leaving and I couldn't stop her." Paloma's heart shattered. She pulled him into her arms, rocking him gently. "It was just a dream, baby. Just a dream." "But she's really gone," Danny whispered. "She's never coming back." Paloma closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. "No, she's not coming back. But you know what?" "What?" "She left you something very special. She left you all her love. It's right here." She placed her hand over his heart. "And here," she touched his forehead. "And it will never, ever go away. Even when you're scared, even when you miss her so much it hurts. Her love is still with you." Danny sniffled. "Really? Really? And you know what else? She sent me to take care of you until you're big enough to take care of yourself. So you're never really alone." She didn't notice Dmitri standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression of raw pain and something deeper, something that looked dangerously like love. Danny's breathing was evening out, his small body relaxing against hers. "Paloma?" he mumbled sleepily. "Yes, baby? Will you sing the song Mama used to sing?" Paloma's throat tightened. "I don't know your Mama's song, mi niño. Papa knows it. Papa, will you sing Mama's song?" Dmitri stepped into the room, his face vulnerable in the dim light. He sat on the edge of the bed, his voice rough as he began to sing a Russian lullaby. His deep voice was surprisingly gentle, the foreign words beautiful and haunting. Danny's eyes drifted closed, finally peaceful. But neither Paloma nor Dmitri moved. They sat there in the darkness, connected by their shared love for this broken little boy, and Paloma realized with terrifying clarity that she was falling in love with both of them. When Dmitri's eyes met hers over Danny's sleeping form, she saw the same realization reflected back at her, and she knew everything was about to change. The storm hit Miami with a vengeance 3 days later. Hurricane-force winds rattled the mansion's windows, while rain lashed against the glass like bullets. The power had gone out an hour ago, and the backup generator hummed ominously in the basement. Danny was terrified. Thunder reminded him of the night his mother died, the storm that had made the roads slick, that had contributed to the accident that stole his world. He clung to Paloma in the living room, where they'd built a fort out of couch cushions and blankets. "It's just noise, mi amor," Paloma whispered, but she could feel his small body trembling against hers. Dmitri paced by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian to someone on the other end. Even in the dim candlelight, Paloma could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched and unclenched. "Papa scared too?" Danny whispered. Paloma looked at Dmitri, this powerful man who controlled an empire but couldn't control the weather that terrorized his son. "Papa's just making sure we're all safe," she said softly. Another crack of thunder made Danny bury his face in her neck. "I want Mama," he sobbed. "I want Mama to make it stop." Paloma's heart broke all over again. She rocked him gently, humming a Spanish lullaby her own mother used to sing. But Danny's cries only grew louder, more desperate. Suddenly Dmitri was there, kneeling beside their makeshift fort. "Danny, look at me." The little boy peeked up, tears streaming down his face. "You know what your mama used to tell me when I was scared?" Dmitri's voice was gentle, patient. "She said that storms are just the sky crying because it misses the sunshine, but after every storm the sun always comes back." "Really?" Danny hiccuped. "Really. And you know what else? She said that the people we love never really leave us. They live right here." He touched Danny's chest, "in our hearts. So even when we're scared, we're never alone." It was almost exactly what Paloma had told him weeks ago. The fact that Dmitri remembered, that he was using her words to comfort his son, made something warm and dangerous bloom in her chest. Danny considered this, then looked between his father and Paloma. "Are you both going to stay with me until the storm stops?" "Of course," Paloma said immediately. "Always," Dmitri added, his eyes meeting hers over Danny's head. They settled into the fort together, an unlikely family huddled against the storm. Danny curled up between them, finally calm with both his protectors close. Paloma found herself acutely aware of Dmitri's presence, of how his arm brushed hers as he adjusted the blankets, of how his voice rumbled through his chest when he spoke. "Tell me about your mother," Dmitri said quietly, his question directed at Paloma. She was surprised by the request, by the genuine interest in his voice. She was everything good in the world. Kind, patient, strong. She worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table after my father left, but she never complained, never made me feel like I was a burden. "How old were you when she died?" 7. Same as Danny when. She trailed off, not wanting to bring up painful memories. "Cancer?" he guessed. "Yes, it was fast, which the doctors said was a blessing, but it didn't feel like one at the time." She stroked Danny's hair as he dozed between them. "I went to live with my grandmother after that. She did her best, but it wasn't the same. Nothing was ever the same." "I'm sorry," Dmitri said, and she could hear the sincerity in his voice. "What about your parents?" she asked, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "My father was a hard man," Dmitri said quietly. "Believed that showing emotion was weakness. My mother, she tried to soften his edges, but she died when I was 15. After that, he became even harder, colder." "Is that why you came to America?" A bitter smile crossed his face. "Among other reasons, I wanted to build something different, something better." He looked down at his sleeping son. "Katya helped me remember what better looked like." The way he said his late wife's name with such love and pain made Paloma's chest tighten with an emotion she didn't want to examine too closely. "She would have liked you," Dmitri said suddenly. "What?" "Katya. She would have liked you. The way you are with Danny, the way you—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "The way you brought light back into this house." Their eyes met in the candlelight, and Paloma felt the air between them charge with something electric. She was suddenly very aware that they were alone. Danny didn't count. He was fast asleep. That Dmitri was looking at her like she was something precious, something he wanted to reach for but didn't dare. "Dmitri," she whispered, not even sure what she was going to say. He leaned closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "You're so beautiful," he murmured, his accent thicker with emotion. "So beautiful and so good, and I have no right to want you the way I do." Her breath caught. "You want me?" "Bože moi, yes. From the moment you walked into my office, from the moment you made my son smile again, from the moment you became the light in our darkness." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But you deserve better than a man like me, better than this life." "What if I don't want better?" she whispered. "What if I want you?" He closed his eyes like her words caused him physical pain. Paloma, I know what you are, she continued, her voice stronger now. I know what you do. And I know I should be scared, should run as far from you as I can get. But I can't, because when I look at you, I don't see the dangerous man everyone else sees. I see Danny's father. I see a man who sings lullabies and builds blanket forts and loves his son more than his own life. You see what you want to see, he said roughly. But I am dangerous, moja drogaya. The things I've done, the enemies I've made. Being close to me puts you at risk. Being alive puts me at risk, she countered. At least with you, I'd be living. He stared at her for a long moment, and she could see the war raging behind his eyes. Want versus responsibility. Desire versus protection. The decision was made for them when Danny stirred, mumbling in his sleep. They both froze, the spell broken, reality crashing back in. But as they settled back into their respective corners of the fort, Paloma caught Dimitri watching her with an intensity that made her skin burn. She knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed between them. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one brewing in her heart. When she woke up hours later, it was to find Danny still sleeping peacefully between them, but Dimitri gone. In his place was a single white rose and a note written in his bold handwriting, "Some storms are worth weathering. D." Paloma pressed the rose to her lips and knew she was completely, irrevocably lost. The truth came out on a Tuesday. Paloma was in Danny's room, helping him build a tower with his blocks, when she heard raised voices from downstairs. Dimitri was in his office with several men. She recognized their voices from previous visits. Business associates, though she tried not to think too hard about what kind of business. "Blyad!" Dimitri's voice carried up the stairs, sharp with anger. "How did they find out about the shipment?" Danny looked up from his blocks, eyes wide. "Papa's mad," he whispered. "Papa's just working," Paloma said gently, though her stomach clenched with worry. "Let's keep building our castle." But the voices grew louder, more heated. She caught fragments, something about a betrayal, a leak, someone who would pay, the kind of conversation that reminded her exactly who Dmitri Petrov was outside these walls. "Paloma," Danny tugged on her sleeve. "I'm scared." She was about to reassure him when footsteps thundered up the stairs. Dimitri appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of cold fury she'd never seen before. Behind him were two of his men, large, intimidating figures who made the spacious nursery feel suddenly cramped. "Pack a bag," Dimitri ordered, his voice clipped. "Both of you, now." "What's happening?" Paloma stood, instinctively moving closer to Danny. "We've been compromised. There's a leak in my organization, and until I find it, you and Danny aren't safe here." The casual way he said it, like discussing the weather, sent ice through her veins. This was his world. Violence, betrayal, constant danger, and somehow she'd forgotten that. "Where are we going?" she asked, already reaching for Danny's overnight bag. "Safe house, 30 minutes outside the city." His eyes softened slightly as they landed on his son, who was watching the adults with growing fear. "It's temporary, just until I handle this." "Handle what exactly?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Dimitri's jaw tightened. "Someone sold information about my operations to the Colombians. They hit one of my warehouses last night, killed 3 of my men." His voice was deadly quiet. "When I find out who betrayed me, they'll wish they'd never been born." The cold promise in his words made Paloma shiver. This was the man the newspapers wrote about, the one who'd built an empire on fear and violence. For weeks, she'd been seeing only the father, the man who sang lullabies and worried about his son's nightmares. Now she was seeing the monster. "Papa," Danny's small voice broke through the tension. "Are the bad men coming?" Dimitri's expression immediately softened as he knelt beside his son. "No one is going to hurt you, Malenki. Papa promises. We're just going on a little trip." "Is Paloma coming too?" "Yes, she's coming too." Danny seemed satisfied with this answer, but Paloma felt anything but reassured. As they packed quickly, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was in way over her head. The safe house was a modest 2-bedroom cottage, hidden among palm trees and mangroves. Isolated, defensible, and completely unlike the luxury of the Bell Harbor mansion. 2 armed guards took positions outside while Dimitri checked every room, every window, every possible entry point. "How long will we be here?" Paloma asked as she unpacked Danny's clothes. "A few days, maybe a week." Dimitri's phone buzzed, and his face darkened as he read the message. I have to go back to the city, handle some things. You're leaving us here. The panic in her voice was unmistakable. You'll be safe. Victor and Alexei are the best I have. He gestured toward the guards outside. They'll die before they let anything happen to you or Danny. The casual mention of death, of men willing to die for them, made her stomach churn. Dmitri, maybe I should take Danny and go stay with my grandmother, just until this is over. His eyes flashed dangerously. No. But if we're not here, if we're somewhere no one would think to look. I said no. His voice brooked no argument. You stay here, where I can protect you, where I know you're safe. Safe? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. We're hiding in a safe house because someone wants to kill you, and you think we're safe. Safer than you'd be anywhere else, he said grimly. My enemies know about you now, Paloma. They know you matter to me. That makes you a target whether you're here or in Cuba. The words hit her like a physical blow. I matter to you? Something vulnerable flickered across his face before the mask slammed back into place. You take care of my son. Of course you matter. But they both knew it was more than that. Had been more than that since the night of the storm, maybe even before. Danny chose that moment to run into the room, clutching Mama Bear. Papa, are you leaving? Dmitri knelt down, pulling his son into a fierce hug. Just for a little while. Paloma will stay with you and I'll be back soon. Promise? I promise, Malenki. Papa always keeps his promises. After Dmitri left, the cottage felt too quiet, too isolated. Paloma tried to keep Danny entertained with games and stories, but she could see the fear in his eyes. He'd lost his mother suddenly, violently. Now his father was gone too, even if temporarily. That night, as she tucked Danny into bed, he looked up at her with those serious grey eyes so much like his father's. Paloma, are you going to leave too? Her heart broke. No, baby, I'm not going anywhere. But what if the bad men come? What if they take you away like they took Mama? Paloma sat on the edge of his bed, smoothing his dark hair. Listen to me, mi niño. Your mama didn't leave because she wanted to. Sometimes bad things happen that nobody can control. But I'm here now and I'm going to stay right here with you. Even if you get scared. Even if I get scared. Even if Papa doesn't come back. The question gutted her, but she kept her voice steady. Your Papa will come back. He loves you more than anything in the world. Danny was quiet for a moment, then, does he love you too? Out of the mouths of babes. That's complicated, sweetheart. Mama used to say that love isn't complicated. People just make it complicated. Paloma smiled despite her churning emotions. Your mama was a smart woman. She was, and she would have liked you. Papa said so. He did. Uh-huh. He said Mama sent you to take care of us. Danny yawned, his eyes drifting closed. Maybe she sent you to take care of Papa too. He's been sad for a really long time. As Danny's breathing evened out in sleep, Paloma sat in the darkness thinking about his innocent words. Had Katya sent her? Was she meant to heal this broken family? Or was she just a woman who'd fallen in love with a dangerous man and his traumatized son, destined to get her heart broken when reality inevitably intruded? Her phone buzzed with a text from Dmitri. Everything okay? She typed back, We're fine. Danny's asleep. Be careful. His response came immediately. Always am. Sweet dreams, moja dorogaya. My dear. He'd called her that before, but tonight it felt different. Like a promise. Like a prayer. Like a goodbye. Paloma fell asleep clutching her phone, unaware that 20 miles away Dmitri Petrov was walking into a warehouse to confront the man who'd betrayed him, knowing it might be the last thing he ever did. The call came at 3 a.m. Paloma jolted awake to her phone ringing, Dmitri's name flashing on the screen. Relief flooded through her. He was alive. He was calling. Everything was okay. Dmitri, she whispered, not wanting to wake Danny. Paloma. His voice was rough, strained. Listen to me carefully. Take Danny and go to the panic room. Victor will show you. Lock the door and don't come out until I get there. Ice flooded her veins. What's happening? The leak. It was closer than I thought. Someone's coming for you. For Danny. She could hear gunfire in the background, shouting. I'm 20 minutes away. Can you do this for me, Dorogaya? Can you keep him safe? Yes, she said, without hesitation, already moving toward Danny's room. Dmitri, I love you, he said suddenly, desperately. I should have told you before. I love you and I'm going to get you both out of this, I promise. The line went dead. Paloma's hands shook as she woke Danny, trying to keep her voice calm. "Hey, baby, we need to play a game, okay? A hiding game." Danny rubbed his eyes, confused. "Now? It's dark." "I know, but it's a special game. Victor's going to show us a secret room, and we're going to hide there until Papa comes. Can you be very quiet and very brave?" Something in her tone must have alerted him to the danger, because he nodded solemnly, clutching Mama Bear to his chest. Victor appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "This way, quickly." The panic room was hidden behind a false wall in the cottage's bedroom, a small reinforced space with its own air supply, communication system, and enough supplies for several days. It was the kind of room that shouldn't exist in a normal person's life, but nothing about her life was normal anymore. "Stay here," Victor instructed, checking the locks. "Don't open this door for anyone except Mr. Petrov or me. Understand?" Paloma nodded, pulling Danny onto her lap as the door sealed them in. The room was lit by soft LED strips, comfortable but undeniably a prison. "I'm scared," Danny whispered. "I know, baby, but Papa's coming, and he's going to keep us safe." She hoped her voice sounded more confident than she felt. They waited in the dim light, Danny eventually dozing against her chest, while Paloma strained to hear any sound from outside. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. What if Dmitri didn't make it? What if whoever was coming found them? What if Danny lost another parent? Then she heard it. Gunfire. Close and rapid. Shouting in multiple languages. The sound of vehicles approaching fast. Danny woke with a start. "What's that noise?" "Just thunder," Paloma lied, holding him tighter. The gunfire intensified, then suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. Footsteps in the cottage, heavy boots on hardwood floors. "Check every room," a voice commanded in accented English. Colombian, maybe. "The boy has to be here somewhere." Paloma's blood turned to ice. They weren't just after Dmitri, they were specifically after Danny, a 4-year-old child. "Paloma," Danny whispered, sensing her fear. "I'm scared." "Shh," she breathed, barely audible. "Remember the quiet game." More footsteps. Closer now. The sound of furniture being overturned, walls being tapped. "There's got to be a safe room," another voice said. Rich bastard like Petrov wouldn't leave his kid unprotected. They were looking for the panic room. They knew it existed. Paloma closed her eyes, holding Danny so tight he squeaked in protest. If they found the room, if they got through the door, she'd fight. She'd die before she let them hurt this child. "Found it!" The triumphant shout made her heart stop. Banging on the reinforced door. The sound of tools, maybe explosives, being prepared. "We know you're in there," the voice called. "Come out now, and we won't hurt the boy." Lies. All lies. Paloma knew enough about Dmitri's world to know that these men wouldn't leave witnesses. The banging intensified. How long would the door hold? Danny was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. "I want Papa," he whispered. "Papa's coming," Paloma promised, though she was no longer sure she believed it. Then, like an answer to prayer, she heard it. The distinctive sound of Dmitri's voice roaring in fury. More gunfire, but different now. Organized. Overwhelming. The banging on their door stopped. Shouting, screaming, the sound of men dying. Then silence. "Paloma!" Dmitri's voice desperate and raw. "Paloma, are you in there?" "We're here," she called back, her voice breaking with relief. The door opened, and there he was, disheveled, blood on his shirt. Not his, she hoped, his face wild with fear and fury. Behind him, she could see bodies in the cottage, but she didn't look too closely. "Are you hurt?" He was on his knees, hands running over both of them, checking for injuries. "Did they touch you? Did they—" "We're okay," Paloma said, though she was shaking so hard she could barely speak. "We're okay." Dmitri pulled them both into his arms, holding them so tightly it almost hurt. She could feel him trembling, could hear him murmuring in Russian, prayers maybe, or promises. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered against her hair. "When I got here and saw, I thought I was too late." "You weren't," she said firmly. "You saved us." He pulled back to look at her, his grey eyes intense. "This is my world, Paloma. This is what loving me means. Danger, violence, always looking over your shoulder. I can't ask you to live like this." "You're not asking," she said quietly. "I'm choosing. You don't understand. I understand perfectly." She cupped his face in her hands. This powerful, dangerous man who'd just killed to protect them. I understand that you love your son more than your own life. I understand that you'd burn the world down to keep us safe. I understand that I love you, Dmitry Petrov, all of you. The father, the protector, even the monster when he needs to come out. His eyes filled with something that might have been tears. You could have died tonight. Because of me. But I didn't. We didn't. And we're not going to. She leaned her forehead against his. We're stronger together. All three of us. Danny, who'd been quietly listening to this exchange, suddenly spoke up. Are we a family now? Dmitry and Paloma looked at each other, then at this brave little boy who'd lost so much but still believed in love, in family, in second chances. Yes, Dmitry said, his voice rough with emotion. We're a family now. Good, Danny said matter-of-factly. Families stick together. Mama told me that. And as they held each other in the aftermath of violence, surrounded by the evidence of how dangerous their love was, Paloma knew that Katya Petrov had indeed sent her, not just to care for Danny, but to heal them all, to make them whole again. 2 years later, Paloma woke to the sound of laughter drifting through the open windows of their new home, a beautiful but secure estate in Coral Gables, far enough from the city to feel peaceful, but close enough for Dmitry to conduct his business. The business that was slowly, carefully, becoming more legitimate with each passing month. She found them in the garden, Dmitry pushing 6-year-old Danny on the swing, while their 8-month-old daughter Katya gurgled happily in her bouncy seat nearby. The sight never failed to take her breath away. This dangerous man being so gentle with his children, so completely devoted to their happiness. "Mama!" Danny called when he spotted her. "Look how high I can go." "Very impressive, mi amor," she called back, settling beside baby Katya and stroking her dark hair. The little girl had her father's grey eyes but Paloma's warm smile, a perfect blend of both their worlds. Dmitry caught the swing and lifted Danny out, both of them walking over to join her on the blanket spread under the oak tree. "Sleep well?" Dmitry asked, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Better than I have in months," she admitted. The nightmares had finally stopped, the ones where she relived that night at the safe house, where she woke up screaming because in her dreams, Dmitry didn't make it in time. Good. He settled beside her, pulling Danny onto his lap while Paloma lifted Katya. "I have news." "Oh?" "The Colombians signed the peace treaty yesterday. It's over, Dorogaya. Really over." Paloma felt tears prick her eyes. For 2 years they'd lived with the constant threat of retaliation, of someone coming for their family. Dmitry had systematically eliminated the threats, but there had always been the fear that someone, somewhere, was planning revenge. "It's really over?" she whispered. "It's really over? We're safe. All of us." Danny looked up at his father. "Does this mean no more bodyguards at school?" Dmitry chuckled. "We'll still have security, Malenki, but less obvious. You won't even notice them." "Good. Victor's nice, but he's terrible at hide-and-seek." They all laughed, and Paloma marveled at how normal this felt. How right. A family having a picnic in their garden, discussing security arrangements like other families discussed carpools. "There's something else," Dmitry said, his voice suddenly serious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we're already married, but I realized I never properly proposed. Never gave you the choice." Paloma's breath caught. They'd married quickly, quietly, 6 months after that terrible night, partly for legal protection, partly because they couldn't bear to be apart any longer. But he was right. There had been no romance, no proposal, no choice. "Paloma Herrera Petrov," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Will you marry me? Again? In front of everyone we love, with no danger, no fear, just us choosing each other." "Say yes, Paloma," Danny urged. "Say yes, so we can have a big party." Through her tears, Paloma looked at this man who'd given her everything, love, family, purpose, a life she'd never dared dream of, who'd protected her, cherished her, made her feel like the most precious thing in his world. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." As Dmitry slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply, Danny cheered, and baby Katya clapped her tiny hands. In the distance, she could see their security team discreetly positioned around the property, but for the first time in 2 years, their presence felt like a comfort rather than a necessity. That evening, after the children were asleep, Paloma and Dmitry sat on their bedroom balcony, looking out over the garden where their family had played all day. "Do you ever regret it?" Dmitri asked quietly. Giving up your old life for this one? Paloma thought about it seriously. Her old life, cleaning hotel rooms, struggling to pay bills, sending money to her grandmother while barely surviving herself. Lonely nights in a tiny apartment, wondering if she'd ever find love, ever have a family of her own. Never, she said firmly. Not for a single second. Even when it was dangerous? Even when you were terrified? Especially then, because that's when I knew for certain that this was real. That you'd fight for us, die for us, kill for us. She turned to face him. I'd rather have one day of this life with you than a lifetime of safety without you. Dmitri pulled her closer, and she could feel his heart beating against her cheek. I love you, moja žena, my wife, my heart, my everything. I love you too, she whispered. All of you. Forever. As they sat there in the peaceful darkness, Paloma thought about that scared young woman who'd walked into a mansion 2 years ago, desperate for a job. She'd thought she was just going to be a nanny. Instead, she'd become a mother, a wife, the heart of a family that had been broken and was now whole. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories began in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes a wrong number, a crying child and a whispered truth in the darkness could change everything. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found your family in the most unlikely place, in the arms of a dangerous man who needed healing just as much as you did. In the nursery down the hall, Danny slept peacefully, no longer plagued by nightmares. In the crib beside his bed, baby Katya dreamed whatever dreams babies dream. And in the master bedroom, Paloma fell asleep in her husband's arms, finally, completely safe. The little boy who'd refused to sleep until his nanny whispered the truth, that he missed his mother's hug, now slept soundly every night, surrounded by love, protected by his father's empire, and cherished by the woman who'd become his second mother. Sometimes love really could heal everything.